One way that you can tell you're getting older and maybe wiser is that a lot of the people around you are going to start dropping dead. People that you have bad relationships with, people that you have good relationships with, people you have terrible relationships with, people you have great relationships with. The longer you're around, the more people start dropping like flies. And one common theme, no matter how good or bad the relationship is that there's always going to be loose threads. There's always going to be unanswered questions about the person, about the relationship. There are going to be moments that you maybe hoped you were going to get that you never get, like a great redemption arc or a big apology or some big epiphany. And what you start to realize is that that Hollywood fairy tale ending that you maybe have been secretly hoping you were going to get is never going to come, because real life isn't about that kind of false order and those narratives. It's about something deeper, something more real, and that's what we're going to talk about in this video. Maybe you're a little bit like me, and when you were growing up you fell into that Hollywood fairy tale delusion that when you got older, you were an adult, you get to that point in life where suddenly everything clicked into place, where all of the big questions of life have been answered, where everything made sense, where your relationships were all harmonious and there was no conflict, exactly like it is at the end of a Hollywood fairy tale, where everyone lives happily ever after and all of their little problems and character quirks have been dealt with because they had some big epiphany that helped them to integrate the shadow self and to just flow with life for the rest of their days. As you get older, you realize it's really not like that. Life is about chaos and uncertainty and not knowing things, not being omnipotent, not being omniscient, just constantly growing and evolving and trying to make sense of all this information that life keeps throwing at us. This idea that it can be any other way and that it's all gonna be neatly woven into a big overarching story that makes sense by the time our lives are over is bullshit. And if you cling on to that idea that you're gonna get that one day, that you're gonna reach that place, then it's gonna affect your relationship with yourself, your relationship with other people, and your relationship with life itself. If you want to be real, it's about giving up that false order and the need for it, which is always ego, and getting into something a bit more chaotic and true. I've been pretty dramatic in this video, but imagine if you died literally right now. Rest in peace. You would leave behind so many loose threads, so many narratives that never got any closure. There'll be small things and big things. Small things like all those texts you didn't reply to, all those appointments you didn't show up to, all the bills you didn't pay. There's just so many little small things that are unresolved. So imagine how many big things there are. All those conversations you never had with people, all those apologies you never gave or received, all of those little moments and epiphanies you were hoping that other people would have so they could understand you, see you, know where you were coming from. If you died right now, you would leave so many loose threads for other people, because life is about that. Life is the loose threads, and it's about trying to make sense of them while you can, but also knowing that there's going to be so many threads you pick up and there's nothing you can do with them, but learning to find peace with that so you can keep moving forward anyway. Stop and think for a second about all the situations in your life right now where you're secretly hoping you're going to get that Hollywood fairy tale happy ending, where somebody's going to have a big epiphany, either you or somebody else, and it's all going to click and you can live happily ever after. Maybe you're waiting for your parents to be proud of you. whatever that even means. You're waiting for them to call you around to their house for a cup of tea or something, and to just announce that they're so proud of you, and all this stuff that you might have been waiting to hear. Or imagine you're gonna have some big epiphany with somebody that you used to love, an ex or something. You haven't spoken to for a long time. Maybe you don't have any feelings or whatever. But deep down, you're waiting for this conversation where you can wrap everything up so neatly and get to this place where you can be happy ever after, knowing that it all makes sense and you got closure, and that the narrative and all of the different arcs and the way people grew and changed has been acknowledged, and everything's just going to be great moving forward. It could just be your business, if you've got a business, or your career, or your purpose, whatever it is. You're waiting for some big epiphany that's going to give you the answers you've been searching, so you can overcome your character flaws, the things that have been making you miserable, and you're just going to become more whole and integrated, and everything's going to be fine for the rest of your life because you finally got it and it all makes sense. The truth is that most of us are running around avoiding ourselves and any epiphany or insight that can break us free of our old patterns, because we're chasing and living out the scripts and the stories that our ego depends on. The ego is the fragmented version of who we are or think we are because of underlying shame, guilt and trauma that makes us go into hiding. And so we're constantly running around doing the things that we think are going to allow us to hide from or outrun our shame and all that stuff. And so most people, if you go to them trying to get an epiphany moment or a Hollywood ending, are basically incapable of going that deep with you. And that's not because there's anything wrong with them, it's just because they're too busy trying to make their own sense of things, or to live out their own best understanding of order, which goes against your understanding of order, because you're seeking things, probably, if you're really attached to getting these Hollywood endings or these little epiphany moments, you're trying to get something to fill the void inside yourself. And so the point is, you can't make people change, you can't force them to have these moments, you can only accept that everyone's just doing their best to make sense of all the chaos and how it makes them feel inside, and how willing they are to face those feelings or to face them head on. Nobody is gonna say something to you that wraps up all the threads, and even if they do, something else is inevitably gonna happen that's gonna bring more loose threads to the equation, and then you're just gonna have to deal with that. And so the best policy is to stop trying to make sense of everything and to embrace the chaos. Of course, this doesn't mean that you can't have moments where you feel like you're in a movie, where you feel like everything is coming together. For example, when you're in love, those first few months of being in love are always amazing. They feel timeless. Everything is flowing. You're connected to everything. You feel so real and whole, and there's so many possibilities. And it's like everything that came before was basically leading up to this period where you met this person and you're going deep and it's getting real. Or maybe it's in your business. Maybe you're going through a period, or in your career, where everything's just working out. The clients are coming, the promotion's coming, you're on the rise, you're in the flow. In these moments, we kind of do feel like we've got that main character energy, because we're putting ourselves in life. All of the tension of being unreal or feeling like we're not in those moments, which is what most of life is for most of us, all of that tension dissolves and we just get to release into being real. But even though those moments feel like all the threads have woven together, time keeps ticking, things keep happening. People will die, things will go wrong. And when it does, we're just gonna have more threads to kind of unravel and deal with. And so it never ends. And And this is really what this video is about. Realizing that nothing ever really ends. The process just keeps processing, and we have to keep processing it to the best of our ability. But then eventually, even when we die, the world keeps going on without us. Nothing ends. And if you want to live a real life, you have to feed into that process rather than attaching to little narratives that try and help you make sense of it all. The point is that all of these stories and narratives, these endings that we think we need, the threads we want to tie up, they're all just interpretations of reality that we've created because of our own ego stuff. How willing we are to face ourselves and face life. If we can't face ourselves in a deep way, then we really need these stories to unfold, these endings to unfold, so that we can get a sense of certainty. Because when we're not real, certainty and control are the things that we need. Because uncertainty and a lack of control mean that we have to face our own shame and things like that. And that means surrendering to life and being humble. Instead, what we do, in general, is come up with a story about how we think things should be, or how they could have been, or how they would be if things could be different. And that's why when people die or things like that, we're left with this lingering sense that things often should have been different. They should have made sense in a different way. But that's because we're not focused on the reality. We're focused on what we wanted from reality instead of what it actually gave us. And if we want to grow real and live our real lives, that's not the best approach. The best approach is to, instead of trying to write a story and have control over it, to keep reading the story. Life is constantly giving us new information. We're constantly learning from things. But it's not the kind of learning where we get full conceptual closure, where all the little pieces of the puzzle finally reveal themselves and make sense. Instead, it's the kind of learning where we just go a little bit deeper into wholeness. We let go of the unreal stuff and we find something more real. And we can always do that because no matter what we understand about the stories, reality is always there, and that process is always processing, and we can always tap into it. So it's getting dark and it's windy as fuck, so hopefully you can hear everything I've said. But anyway, the whole point of this video is that we keep looking for these Hollywood endings, these big epiphanies, the threads been woven together and it all making sense, everything clicking into place. This is not what we need, because if we want to live our realist lives and to heal and to keep flowing and to integrate the shadow and all the stuff I like to talk about on this channel, we have to let go of all of the needs for controlling things that we can't control. And that includes trying to understand things that we can't understand, which is other people's stories, the real ones, other people's experiences, other people's lives, the things that are stopping them from having epiphanies, the things that are putting on the cusp of an epiphany. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter if the epiphanies come or not. All that matters is that we learn from what is available to us, what's right in front of us, and that we just understand that everyone is dealing with the same shit. Everyone is dealing with the human condition, which is that we don't know everything, we can't know everything, but we can always know enough to take another step forward by trusting that process and feeding into it, instead of just forcing ourselves upon it. To improve our relationship with life, we need to get better at observing life. The way that it's constantly changing, constantly evolving, whether nobody and nothing ever reaches that state of completion. The people we know and love, whether we have good or bad relationships with them, at the end of their lives, they're not going to have been a finalized piece of art or anything like that. They're going to die as a work in progress. And when we die, it's the same. We're going to leave behind so many questions, so many threads that are not going to make sense to other people or that can never be raveled together. It's because we're not independent entities. We're not isolated from life. We're part of it. All of this, everything going on all over the world, it's all feeding into everything else. We might not be close enough in proximity to see that. But we can live in such a way where we recognize that we're all in the same boat. And so all we can really do is stop expecting the threads to all come together into this beautiful tapestry, but to at least embrace that the threads are there. Sometimes we can learn from them, sometimes we can't. But the Hollywood ending's not coming, nor is the fairy tale ending. Life simply isn't like that. But life is still amazing if you embrace the chaos and give up the false order. So that was a video filmed right here on planet Earth. I hope it made you think. I hope it made you realize you don't have to wrap up everything neatly in life, because it's not even possible to do so. And not all the relationships you have are the relationships that you have. There's no big epiphany that's going to save you or anybody else, or to save your relationships. The people we have are the people we have. And there's going to be good, there's going to be bad. But whichever way you look at it, there's always going to be more real than anything else. And if you can tap into that, life keeps flowing, because you're in the process of learning and evolving. Something like that anyway. So it's dark, it's getting darker, the moon is up there behind that cloud, kind of. But I hope this video helped you. If you have any questions, leave a comment or get in touch with me on my website. If you want to book a call with me, there's a link. We can have a free coaching session, go deeper into getting you in the process of living that real life. But in the meantime, stay real out there. Peace to you.